Here we will see System.Threading.Thread class in C#. In C#, the System.Threading namespace is used for working with threads. A multi-threading system is built upon the System.Threading.Thread class. Thread class encapsulates the execution of the threads. It allows creating and accessing individual threads in a multi-threaded application. This class contains several methods and properties which helps in managing and creating threads, and this class is defined under System.Threading namespace. When a process starts, the CLR, that is Common Language Runtime, automatically creates a single foreground thread to execute application code. Along with this main foreground thread, a process can create one or more threads to execute a portion of the program code which is associated with the process. Different constructors for thread class are as follows. First is thread with parameterized thread start, which initializes a new instance of the thread class, specifying a delegate that allows an object to be passed to the thread when the thread is started. Thread with parameterized thread start and integer value initializes a new instance of the thread class, specifying a delegate that allows an object to be passed to the thread when the thread is started and specifying the maximum stack size for the thread. Then thread with parameter thread start, which initializes a new instance of the thread class. Thread with parameters thread start and integer value initializes a new instance of the thread class, specifying the maximum stack size for the thread. Then different properties for thread class are current thread, which gets the currently running thread, is alive, which gets a value indicating the execution status of the current thread, is background, which gets or sets a value indicating whether or not a thread is background thread, is thread pool thread, which gets a value indicating whether or not a thread belongs to the managed thread pool, managed thread ID, which gets a unique identifier for the current managed thread, name, which gets or sets the name of the thread, priority, which gets or sets a value indicating the scheduling priority of the thread, thread state, which gets a value containing the states of the current thread. Different methods with thread class are: first is abort, which raises a thread abort exception in the thread on which it is invoked to begin the process of the terminating thread. Calling this method usually terminates the thread. Abort with object raises a thread abort exception in the thread on which it is invoked to begin the process of terminating the thread, while also providing exception information about the thread termination. Calling this method usually terminates the thread. Begin thread affinity notifies a host that managed code is about to execute instructions that depend on the identity of the current physical operating system thread. Equals with object determines whether the specified object is equal to the current object. Then finalize, which ensures that resources are freed and other cleanup operations are performed when the garbage collector reclaims the thread object. Get current process ID, which gets an ID used to indicate on which processor the current thread is executing. Get domain returns the current domain in which the current thread is running. Get type gets the type of the current instance. Interrupt is used to interrupt a thread that is in wait sleep join thread. Join method blocks the calling thread until the thread represented by this instance terminates, while continuing to perform standard com and send message pumping. Member-wise clone method creates a shallow copy of the current object. Reset abort method cancels an abort requested for the current thread. Resume method resumes a thread that has been suspended. Sleep with parameter integer value suspends the current thread for the specified number of milliseconds. Sleep with timespan method suspends the current thread for the specified amount of time. Start method causes the operating system to change the state of the current instance to running. Start with object parameter causes the operating system to change the state of the current instance to running, and optionally supplies an object containing data to be used by the method the thread executes. Suspend method either suspends the thread or, if the thread is already suspended, has no effect. Volatile read integer value, which reads the value of the field. On system that requires it, inserts a memory barrier that prevents the processor from reordering memory. The operation will work as follows. If a read or write appears after this method in the code, the processor cannot move it before this method. Then volatile write with two integer values writes a value to a field. On system that requires it, insert a memory barrier that prevents the processor from reordering memory operations as follows. If a read or write appears before this method in the code, the processor cannot move it after this method. Yield method causes the calling thread to yield execution to another thread that is ready to run on the current processor. The operating system selects the thread to yield.